Hello again, welcome to another look at the weekend and next week's weather courtesy of netweather.tv. Well, Scotland and Northern Ireland accepted. What a lovely few days it's been, assuming of course you like hot sunny weather. I haven't been able to enjoy it at all, so I've been working so hard at the BBC unfortunately in the last few days, but at least it was air conditioned. And we have the big sort of little question mark as to whether we're going to beat the all-time October record. On the 1st of October, if we beat 29.4 degrees Celsius, then that'll be a new all-time record. However, things are going to be changing, not very far off from Sunday, and certainly next week looks very different. Let's have a look at the pressure pattern. We have an intense area of low pressure at the moment near Iceland and high pressure over Europe, and squeezed in between we have the warm southerly winds and hence these high temperatures, and they're dry winds too, so hence the cloudless skies. Now the high will eventually ridge into Scandinavia and topple, and then it's going to link across to a new area of high pressure across into the middle of the Atlantic, and that high then probably slips away. So all in all, we are going to see a change as high pressure gives up from influencing our weather and low pressure takes over. In fact, the low pressure from Iceland, quite a deep one at that, is going to move into the Norwegian Sea, pulling in much colder and stronger northwesterly winds, and these slowly veer more to the north as time goes on and the high pressure rebuilds, but this time to the west of the country rather than to the east. Let's have a look now at the temperature of the atmosphere, and obviously we start off with hot air across the southeast especially, that's the red there, but it does shrink away over the weekend and the beginning of next week as the cooler yellow and green air approaches from the west, although it stays warm in the south at least until Sunday. But then later on into next week, much cooler air dives southwards together with strong winds, and you notice some blue shading there. That's indicating that there will be some snow on the hills, at least in the north. What a big contrast over just a few days. A lot of it is driven by the jet stream. At the moment we have a southerly jet to the west of the British Isles, but a new, quite vigorous jet stream is going to push out from the USA and across the Atlantic in a few days' time, and then on into the United Kingdom, so turning our weather much more unsettled. And then later that jet veers more towards the north, and that's pulling in that colder air. So I hope you've made the most of the last gasp of summer, although I suppose it might not be. We still have an Indian summer perhaps to come in the middle of October, but we'll keep our fingers crossed on that one. On a day-to-day basis, for Friday it looks like a wet start in Northern Ireland, and that rain will spread into Scotland during the course of the day, except for easternmost parts. And in those northern areas where it'll be breezy and cloudy and often wet, temperatures of course will be near to normal. England and Wales, a very different story. Yet again another dry, sunny and hot day. Temperatures up to 29 degrees. It will be somewhat cloudier probably in some westernmost areas. And then on Saturday, hot and sunny again across the Midlands and East Anglia, as well as central, southern and southeastern parts of England. But again, rather more cloud beginning to arrive in some of the more western parts. The southwest of England, Wales, much of northern England for instance, and the south and east of Scotland. Although most of these areas will be dry and still fairly bright and warm. The wet weather is saved for Northern Ireland and the northwest of Scotland, where you could have some clearer weather just for a time later on in the day, and temperatures again in those parts closer to normal. On Sunday, more rain around in Scotland and Northern Ireland, although there'll be a clearer start, I think, in the more northern parts of Scotland. And it's going to get cloudier as time goes on in northern England, much of Wales, some patchy rain spreading into those areas from the north during the course of the day. Starting off fairly heavy, but getting light and much more scattered, the outbreaks of rain, as time goes on. The last of the sunny and hot days again, I think, in the south of the country. Even here, perhaps not quite so hot and not quite as bright blue and clear skies either. There will be some patchy cloud around. It'll get a little bit breezier. Now, two important events on Sunday. First of all, we have the Loch Ness Marathon. And secondly, not very far away, we have the Great Cumbrian Run starting in Carlisle. Well, I wouldn't want to have been one of the runners if it's been like the weather we're having at the moment, with temperatures of 28 and 29 Celsius, that is. But I think by Sunday it will have turned cooler in both those areas, cooler and breezier and cloudier, and there could even be a little bit of rain to help the runners on their way. On Monday, bright weather still holding on in the southeast, otherwise it's going to become fairly windy across the country, with rain spreading to most parts during the course of the day, and it'll begin to feel much cooler, temperatures dropping back closer to normal, except perhaps in the extreme southeast. Then on Tuesday, definitely a windy day. There'll be rain in places, some of that rain quite heavy, especially in the west of Scotland, and it's going to feel a good deal cooler just about everywhere. Still some bright intervals around, though, in the more sheltered areas in the east, but those winds touching gale force in the north of the country in northern Scotland. And then from Wednesday onwards, for the latter part of the week, it looks like being unsettled, at least to begin with, even some snow over the Scottish mountains. And then towards the end of the week, we settle into a north-south split. The northern parts of the country stay windy and unsettled, with rain at times, some snow at the hills, whereas the southernmost parts of the country sees high pressure beginning to take command again, and it'll become dry. Might be a little bit of rain around, but mostly dry, and there could be some fog and frost around night and morning, as well as some sunshine by day. Well, that's all from me for the time being. By this time next week we'll have seen a complete change in the weather, but between now and then you've got a few days left, so get out and enjoy, and goodbye from me.